All right, welcome to this episode of the Anti-Aging Insights podcast. Thrilled to have you along. As you know, I'm Dr. Teri Fisher, and I have a special guest with us today, Dan Julien, all the way from Ottawa, virtually in Vancouver with me. Sorry, did I say? Why did I say Ottawa?
Well, okay. I am in Ottawa, yeah, for sure.
Oh, I thought you said Toronto.
No, I'm in Ottawa. I actually have another clinic that I'm a medical director for, and I do injections there once every 4 to 6 weeks. So some people aren't sure if I'm from Ottawa or Toronto, but in Ottawa.
All right, in Ottawa. I was right the first time. Awesome. Well, it's great to have you here, Dan. Really thrilled to chat with you. I've been following you on Instagram, and I'll just throw it out there right now. If people are not following you on Instagram, they should, because you got a ton of great content when it comes to aesthetics.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
But let's get right into this. I want to learn a little bit about you, Dan, first of all. What's your story? What's your origin story here into the world of aesthetics?
You know what? So for me, so I'm a nurse practitioner. I've been a nurse practitioner for 13 years now, and actually was a registered nurse before that for 8 years. And but for about 20 years, I was looking to have my own business somehow, and I didn't know how to do that. As a nurse practitioner, the only thing I kind of find was like non-profit or non-for-profit or something rural, and I really wanted to stay, somewhere downtown central where I live and have always lived. So that really wasn't working for me, and the medical aesthetics thing came about based on one of my nurse practitioner students, because one of the reasons why I didn't jump into it was because I thought I had to have a physician as a medical director. My previous employment, where I was at University of Ottawa Health Services at a family clinic mixed with HIV and hepatitis C, was actually had like an infectious disease focus, which is totally different from this. Patient population demographics like extremely different.
Sure.
And then I was having this discussion with one of my students, and she said, Dan, we just learned about this in roles. Because this is a private entity, you have the knowledge, skill, and judgment to do this on your own. You can do it independently. And that was a light bulb just like went off. I remember having goosebumps. I thought there was something missing, so I called the college and they confirmed it. And then from then on, I was like 110% diving right into medical aesthetics and trying to get as much knowledge as possible, because I knew that Ottawa was kind of like a sleeping giant for medical aesthetics, and I just needed to grab the reins and run. So that happened. That journey started 5 years ago, and it's been 5 years that I've been doing this now.
That's amazing. And now you've got, I've seen on Instagram, you've got a beautiful clinic. And how long ago did you open that clinic?
That clinic was open a year and a half ago almost, so it was November 2021, and it was like right, kind of like we were still in the pandemic, but things were working well with social media for us. Things were blowing up. A lot of people were like, "Yeah, you should have your own place." And I also had to convince my wife that we had to do this, because I was dropping like literally everything at the other facility, which I had 4 jobs actually going, and my wife was also working. And I convinced her, I'm like, we're going to go all in for this, and we did. She actually runs 50% of the partnership with me. She does all the business, I do the injections.
Amazing. You know that the clinic that I actually work at right now, which is called Anti-Aging, it's a husband and wife team as well. Medical director is Dr. Frame. His wife is Nadine Frame, and she's basically the CEO of the clinic. So I can appreciate that it works great here, and I imagine it works awesome for you guys. So that's great.
It does. It works.
Amazing. So, all right, you are very knowledgeable. As I mentioned, I've been following you on Instagram. I love the fact that you do a ton of teaching. My listeners will know that I've had an education degree in the past, and I love to educate. And so we're talking the same language here. I know you've got a whole platform about education for injectors as well through your Patreon account. We can talk a little more about that later on. But you are known for answering questions about cosmetic treatments and fillers and neuromodulators and the whole bit. And we were chatting, and we thought, what better person to answer some of the frequently asked questions about fillers than Dan Julien? And so you're here. We've got a couple of questions lined up for you, and I thought we could just have a chat about some of the fillers and some of the frequently asked questions that patients throw out to you. So,
absolutely, man. Go nuts.
All right. Well, let's start off with question number 1 here. And first one is, and this is a really common question, I get this a lot too, is when someone gets a treatment with fillers, how long does that treatment last? How long does the filler stay in the skin? And are there different types of fillers that that will stay shorter or longer?
Yeah, so let's focus on I think hyaluronic acid fillers are the ones that a lot of people are associating with. There are different other groups, but let's stick with hyaluronic acid because they're the most common, and there's still a lot of questions involved around that, like how long does it last? Well, there's two, almost like three answers with that. The first one is how long does the aesthetic look last, right? And that really depends on where you're placing it. If you're placing it in an area of the face where there's not much mobility, such as tear trough, jawline, chin, temples, forehead, anything like that, nose, it's not going anywhere. It's not moving, so it's going to stay there. The aesthetic result is likely going to be about a year. And I say 9 months to a year, give or take. Now, that is the aesthetic look. That's the duration of the product that you can see. The actual breakdown of the filler really does vary on the brand and also on how thick the product is, which is called the G prime. So if you have a high G prime, it's really thick. It works well against deformation, which is like the force that's pressed on it. And the thicker the product tends to break down a little slower. So it's around 12 to 24 months. And the thicker stuff breaks down closer to 15 to 24 months. So what does that mean? That means pay attention to how often you're getting these fillers done, right? So if you're getting the fillers done every 9 months, well, the product may be building up over time, and that's how you get these pillow faces. This is one of the common reasons why people get pillow faces, is because a lot of providers are telling them, you know, this stuff, it will last about 9 to 12 months. That's when you should come up and get another top up. Well, if you're only relying on hyaluronic acid, eventually it will catch up to you. So you have to make sure that you're aware of these things. You're seeing a provider who's knowledgeable and looking out for you for the long run. So that's basically the nuts and bolts of aesthetic look and duration, and also the breakdown. But there's a lot of science. The third part is like the science where we are seeing in MRIs and ultrasounds now fillers that are lasting much longer. Like these fillers are supposed to be gone by 2 years, but we're seeing in ultrasounds and MRIs are lasting sometimes 10, 15 years. Like, how is that possible? Well, there's two answers for that. The long duration is like, basically this is a synthetic form of hyaluronic acid. We make our own hyaluronic acid. That's what hydrates everything in our tissues in our body. But this is a synthetic version. There's a bond that keeps it together. That bond breaks down between 12 and 24 months. And then after that, it just kind of like integrates into the tissues naturally. Now, it's a possibility that you can see that synthetic hyaluronic acid that is, morphed and blended into the tissues after maybe several years. Is that dangerous? No, not in my opinion, but potentially you can see it on an MRI, and that's where people kind of get freaked out about it. It can be, maybe a complication if sometimes this hyaluronic acid, your body can make like almost like a capsule, like a cyst around the gel, and that can stay there for years and years and years. And yeah, you should probably dissolve that because those capsules can harden up and then potentially cause maybe issues later on, but that's a big maybe. So in the end, if it breaks down, like the whole duration of the gel actually lasting where it's supposed to, max 2 years, but can it integrate into tissues? Absolutely. How long does it take until it's not visible on MRI? I don't even really know, but it's a synthetic form and it's not causing any harm. And if you don't look funny, don't worry about it. But if you feel you look funny, go get it dissolved. That's the beauty of it.
There you go. And maybe that actually leads really nicely into one of the other questions here. Is that's like, what if you get a filler and someone then decides, well, I'm not sure if that was for me and I don't really like the way it looks. Like, what can they do about that?
You can get it dissolved. So the one thing that's really nice about this hyaluronic acid filler is it's very safe. So whether there's a medical emergency or you just don't like it, you can just place an enzyme which is called hyaluronidase. And by the way, our body makes not only naturally hyaluronic acid, but we also make our own hyaluronidase, which is an enzyme that's always breaking down our own hyaluronic acid. We've also found a version to make that into a synthetic form. So if you don't like it, it just breaks it down, essentially kind of converts it very similarly to like a water molecule, and then over night, basically it's gone, and you look just the way you did before.
And that's one of the really, really great things about the hyaluronic fillers, as you said. So you mentioned a term a little bit earlier that I think we should just sort of maybe explain for the audience, and maybe this ties into the hyaluronidase. Pillow faces. So when you say if you're getting HA on top of HA on top of HA, maybe you can explain a little bit more about what that means, and then how would you approach that? What would you do?
Okay, so that's a great question, man. And actually, it's one of probably my most viewed YouTube channel videos, and that one talks about lip filler, migration, lip fillers over time, what happens, and basically, lips, for example, are one of those areas on the face where there's a lot of movement. So that lip is literally grabbing that HA and pulling it back slowly, like slowly,
Mm.
minute amounts every day, but eventually it moves back. And it moves back because the muscle up on top of the lip, which is called the ergotrid, that muscle is much thinner. And the muscle for the vermilion, which is like where the red part of the lip is, that's much thicker. If your lip is constantly moving and grabbing that filler, it's likely going to push it to the path of least resistance, which is that thinner muscle area. And this is why people end up having kind of like duck lips, because every 6 months they're like, where'd my filler go in my lips? And the provider will tell them something like, oh, you have a lot of movement there, so your metabolism is burning it. That doesn't make any sense. No, you don't have more metabolism in one area. You're just taking the filler and you're just pushing it back slightly.
Uh,
And then if you inject again every 6 months, well, again, that filler lasts how long? 12 to 24 months. You keep injecting one syringe every 6 months. Eventually, you're going to have these massive duck lips, and it just keeps pocketing back. So that's the one thing I'll tell clients. I'll say, hey, by the way, if you're doing your lips and you like the look of the lips, then do them twice. You know, you can do them every 6 months if you want. But after the second time, when you come back for your third, I do recommend dissolving them and then restarting fresh. And therefore, you're not going to have the issue with the migration. And the reason why, the other issue with that is once that migration happens, especially in the lip where it makes a pocket, that pocket will likely stay there. And even if you dissolve it, sometimes what happens is the filler is just going to go back right into that pocket because it's created this void, this path of least resistance. So try and avoid that as much as possible by just, keeping it natural. You can do your lips once a year if you want. You may not like them for about 6 months or 3 months because you're kind of like wanting a little extra, and
mm.
that's fine. You can add more, but just be cognizant of how often you should be doing that and how long the filler actually lasts in the face until it breaks down.
Gotcha. That's great. No, good, fantastic answer. Love it, love it. What about? So here's another question that I know that you've been asked, and I want to throw it out there. I've been asked this as well. The cost of the fillers.
Yeah,
Because there's a range. Do cheap fillers mean cheap results? How do you sort of tackle that question?
it's a great question, and it's a great question for the general audience to be aware of. So, the one thing that's awesome about being in Canada is that we're very strict with our regulations. So, whatever is Health Canada approved or whatever is approved as an injectable here goes through extremely strict regulations, and only then will it be approved. So, whether the brand is very popular or not, if it's Health Canada approved, it's not the brand that's going to make the difference. It's this. It's the hand. It's the person who
Mm,
understands not only the person's face, but also the rheology, which is how the filler is put together and how it's going to work with those tissues, right? So most brands right now, whether they're inexpensive or very expensive, have a range of very thin to very thick fillers. And it's our job to figure out where that should go on the face according to the location, the movement, and also how thick or thin the skin pads or the skin is, and also the fat pads are on the face. These are all decisions that we make, and to be honest, anything that's Health Canada approved, in my opinion, I could take and do just as good a job as the most expensive stuff. And to be honest, there's some of the top branded stuff that people hear about all the time, and one in particular, I'm not going to name it, but that one actually, sometimes can cause a little bit more issues because some of them draw in more water than other. And I'll tell you one, the most expensive brand out there draws in the most water out of all of them, which is, very hydrophilic, which means that it might look good now, but over time, it's like one of those little water beads that you put in water in a cup of water and just like expands and sucks it all up. That's kind of what happens with this product over time. You can't really give perfect results with it because over time it's going to get bigger and bigger. And your face might get a little puffy. So there's one brand in particular, I'm not going to name it, but that it's the most expensive brand on the market right now. It tends to do that. Otherwise, every other brand that I'm aware of, what you see is what you get. Doesn't draw in that much water, and it really does a good job. I think the cost is more or less where you're going. The cost is going to be basically the provider who's going to make the mark, right? So they're going to decide, are they going to be a premium clinic jack their prices up, and then they're going to get the premium, people, or people who have the most money, who are looking for, basically they're looking for a brand, and also they're looking for maybe a plastic surgeon or someone who's in the field and they know that are doing a great job. They're going to pay the top tier. And then people who are maybe just starting out, or if they're chain clinics or they're buying lots of volume and they can charge less, this is the difference. These are the reasons why people charge more or less. It's not really the filler, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's really well said. And I think the thing that I really want to focus on, almost everything that you said there, was also just the experience of the person. And clearly, for those that are fortunate enough to be in your area, I know where they should be going, and hopefully they do look you up, because you just, the wealth of knowledge that you have, just hearing you speak about this stuff is fantastic. So amazing. What about, and we touched on this a little bit in terms of the HA fillers being integrated into the tissue. Are you aware of any harmful chemicals that can be, what's the word I'm looking for, that can be given off or dispersed from the HA once it's in the body? Is there any evidence for that you're aware of?
No, there's nothing really in it that's there's not one specific, let's say vitamin or additive that's placed into a filler that can cause issues. Again, the one filler that's the most expensive brand right now, they have something called a Vicross technology, and the Vicross technology sometimes can cause maybe some issues. The owners of this company are not saying that they are the reason why this happens. They say this can happen with any filler, but realistically, the reason why it's happening with this company is because they have Vicross technology, which means that bond that I was talking about that holds the gel together, they actually made two different bonds and held this product together with two different types of molecules. They have a large molecule and a small molecule. And that combination is supposed to make the product last a little longer. But what's happening is that once in a while, that can cause, we're starting to see something pro-inflammatory and nodules and granulomas later on that are happening. That can happen almost immediately afterwards, or it can happen, even 6 months to a year or 2 years down the road. It's very rare, and it really does depend probably on the person. It also depends on how much was used. But honestly, other than that, which is a very, very rare occurrence, this stuff is very clean. Most of the time, it's pure hyaluronic acid with nothing else in it. And sometimes some people may add a couple vitamins just to help the skin, but definitely nothing in there to actually cause harm long term. So generally, extremely safe product.
Great. And along those lines, the next question is what about allergic reactions? Can people be allergic to HA fillers?
You know what? It's extremely rare that people get allergic reactions to HA fillers, and it's just because they've found a way to keep it clean. It's a synthetic version of your own hyaluronic acid. So, I've yet to see anyone have an allergic reaction, and it's very, very rare that people actually have any reactions to these products at all.
Cool. That's great. So this next question I thought was really fascinating. It's actually that I hadn't thought about until you communicated. This is a common question that you get. What happens if somebody gets filler, let's say the lips, for example, and they get an accidental injury to the face, or they get a cut lip or something like that? What happens? Will the filler be okay, or what do you do with that sort of situation?
I think if you get a cut lip, if you split your lip and you've got filler in there, I don't think you're going to care too much about your filler. You're going to want to
good point.
tear your lip up and be like, oh my god, I almost scarred your lip up.
Good point.
But let's just say it really depends on when it was done, right? So let's say you did the filler yesterday. Well, it hasn't completely integrated into the tissue yet, and at the same time, it really depends also how much you're putting in. So if you're putting a mild amount, if you split your lip, you could probably squeeze it out, I guess. But if it's going to, let's say if this was placed, 4 months ago or something like that, it's pretty hard to squeeze something out because it does kind of integrate naturally with the tissues. It stays there. And if you really wanted to, you could probably, find your way and see if you can squeeze a little filler out, but it's not going to cause any harm. It literally will likely just stay there. It ends up working well with the tissues. So let's say if there was a split there, the hyaluronic acid is just going to stay there. And if you end up getting sutured up, it's just going to look the same, just with a little scar. It's not going to cause any issues later on.
Perfect. That's great. So those are some of the, well, we actually flew through those. Those are some of the most common questions. I'm sure there's a million other ones that you can answer. Let me ask you this, just from my perspective, and I always love to chat with expert injectors. What kind of injections are your favorite? What areas of the face do you love to treat? Do you have a favorite part or favorite part of the face?
Yeah, I've really loved doing a lower face jawline.
Yeah.
For who my favorite clients are right now are slightly more mature women, because they come in and they have the jowling and it's just devastating to them. That is what ages them. They feel ages them the most, and they just really hope to kind of like get rid of that. Unfortunately, they come always to me and be like, they give me this, lifting motion of the face. Can you do one of these? And I can't do that, but what I can do is I can give the illusion that it's not there, and you're placing filler, just in front of it, just in back of it, just enough to not create heaviness in the lower face as well. Keep it feminine, respecting the proportions. And it really is such a nice little game changer. We have people fly in, and I had no idea they're flying in for this. They're getting a full jaw restoration, because sometimes it's not just the jowling. They've also lost some fat pads where they've shifted forward in the preauricular area. And if you can restore all that really beautifully, then it just takes years off them. And honestly, we have women who are crying in our office, and it's really touching stuff. So right now I really like the lower face. And my second favorite is probably tear trough and cheek. And the reason why is because that's, people will see me often enough to say, like, I just feel like I look tired, or I just want to take some years off. So for the tired aspect usually is around the eyes. If I can wake that up and just kind of restore a little bit of the fat pads in the cheek that I've lost, and kind of redirect the light reflex on the apex of the cheek, it's lovely. They're super happy, and I'm really happy with that too. So those are probably my top two.
Amazing. When I hear you speak, it's just, I can hear the sort of the artistry in your mind.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a big part of it. The business is a business, and it's important. Understanding safety is crucial. Actually, before I even started injecting, I spent 6 months researching everything I could in medical aesthetics with regards to safety and anatomy, and especially like the location of arteries on the face. Because if I can have that down, if I can understand not only like how can I improve safety and not be anxious when I'm injecting, then I can work on my artistry. And luckily, I do have an art background. My family, we're all artists. My mother's a painter. My sister's a graphic designer. We're all a bunch of doodlers, and we've always been very artistic. So this is kind of like, it's almost, I tell Michelle, like, I'm lucky that I'm really good at this because of the art background, but I take the art seriously. And I think for anyone who's in injecting, a lot of times they don't know how to draw a face for a masculine and feminine face. So understand how to draw a face from the front and from the side profile and 3/4. And if you can do that, just teaching yourself that, there's certain rules, rule of thirds, rule of fifths, dimensions of golden ratio and stuff like that. These are things that are really important, and they will help your artistic eye, because there are a lot of providers out there that say they have an artistic eye. I'm like, oh yeah, okay, give me a drawing, and they can't do it. So you can't, there has to be an objective measurement there, and yeah, so that's my approach.
That's amazing. Oh, I love it. I was actually wondering if you had an artistic background, so it's interesting that you mentioned that. That makes a lot of sense. It's interesting to hear.
I appreciate that.
All right. Well, thanks so much. I want to give you a chance to just share with the listeners and the viewers all the incredible things that you have going. As I mentioned earlier, you're an educator. You share your knowledge, which is fantastic. I will put the plug in for you. Definitely check out Dan's Instagram profile. And you can give us your handle. It is just Dan. I'll let you say it. Go ahead.
It's so it's Danesthetics Medical.
Right.
And it's all one word. And I do have a YouTube channel and Instagram, and both are really kind of like interesting, where if you're looking for, let's say if you want to know how fillers are done in the face, that YouTube channel is really dedicated to describing on a mannequin the safety aspects, and also all the little secret techniques that I use whenever I'm doing fillers in order to keep things accurate, differentiate masculine versus feminine faces. And I actually got a lot of slack by doing that from all the medical providers. They're like, why are you giving all the secrets away? These are gold. And I said, you know what? It's going to benefit me somehow in the future. And it has. The community is, very there's not too many people like to share their secrets. So I was definitely like, stepping outside the box doing that, but it's been great. And as a result, I just ended up becoming this educator. So now every Monday, which is tonight, what I'll do is I'll actually plug on my Instagram every Monday. I'll say, hey, if you guys have any medical aesthetics questions, post them my way, and I answer them tonight and throughout the next day. And there's a lot of great information. It's all free, it's all engaging, and it's super fun. And you know, it's not too stuffy either. And you get to see my wife and I do some TikTok dances too there, so that's cool.
I was gonna say people should follow just to see the dancing. It's fun to see. The other thing though I want you to talk about briefly, if that's all right, is I also want you to talk a little bit about the education that you do for other injectors, and that's providing a great service as well. So tell us a little bit about that too.
So whenever I did that YouTube channel, people were saying, this is great. I wish you could do this on a real client. But I couldn't post real clients on YouTube all the time because of patient confidentiality. But what I could do is create a Patreon. And a Patreon is this platform where providers can pay me a monthly fee. Basically, it's like a donation basically. And what I do is I do the same thing except on live clients. They have consent forms filled, and I just do my injection techniques, and it's the entire face. And basically, I go over anatomy, I go over tips and how to fine tune, perfect things, and also I go to a ton of conferences. So I come back and share my knowledge from these conferences there, and it's a very unique and cool platform that's affordable because in this industry, everything's very expensive.
I can attest to that. Well, Dan, hey. Wow, thanks so much for spending some few minutes out of your busy Mondays, your education day. So we'll take that, and I'll say I think we checked the box there for today, and I appreciate it so much. Any other websites or any other resources you want to just throw out there for the viewers? Anybody else that you want to, or any other places I should say that you want to suggest that they check out?
Well, I am speaking at CBAM, which is Canadian Board of Aesthetics Medicine, in June. There's a aesthetics congress there that I'm speaking for. If you want to check that out, go ahead. But otherwise, just see me on Instagram. I'm not going to plug anything too crazily here. I just want you guys to have fun, get some free content and education and fun. And that's what I'm all about, keeping it easy but educational.
Perfect. All right. Well, Dan, hey, again, thanks so much for joining us today. Really appreciate your time, and hope we can chat again sometime real soon.
Perfect. Thanks for having me, man. Take care, Teri.
Take care.
Yeah.